Salam, peace be upon you, and the mercy and blessings of God. My name is Muhammad Laik Siddiqui, the father of Holophase. Remember the language we are learning. There is one field, phi, the holophase, one continuous cyclic movement from which all of reality unfolds. When phi begins to change, its first derivatives appear, and with them, the three dimensions show themselves at once. Time as omega, space as kappa, and motion as nu, built from both. Every higher derivative is a finer question about how phi changes, and each one casts three shadows together: a time shadow, a space shadow, and a motion shadow. These echoes mix and weave into one another, forming the patterns we call fields, particles, bodies, thoughts, and worlds. In this picture, everything that exists is a living tapestry of phi, endlessly echoing through its derivatives and their dimensional shadows. Today we build the simple, visible, warning label that keeps powerful knowledge from being misused. This is part 52, and its name sounds bureaucratic, but its purpose is life-saving. Registry requirements and certification labels. This is the bridge between the fortress of rigorous knowledge and the real world that must use that knowledge. It is the moment when the epistemic firewall, after all its tests and discipline, produces one clear thing that ordinary users can trust: a label. Because here is the hard reality. Even if we build perfect archives, 1,000-page dossiers containing every test, every anomaly, every scope condition, most people will not read them. Engineers working under deadlines will not read them. Doctors in a crowded clinic will not read them. Policymakers facing crises will not read them. Even scientists in a new field will not read them. People need a summary. Not a vague summary, a precise one. The kind that tells you, in one glance, what you are allowed to do and what you are forbidden to do. That is what a certification label is. Not prestige, not decoration, not bragging rights. A certification label is operational permission. It is the safe to use stamp and the do not use warning. Apply to rules the way society applies it to medicines, bridges, airplanes, electrical devices, and food. Now let's start with a story. Imagine you are in a pharmacy. You are sick, you are tired, you want relief. On the shelf, you see two bottles that look similar. Both have confident names. Both promise help. One is approved and tested. The other is something unknown. How do you decide? You do not read the full research history of the drug in that moment. You look at the label. You check dosage, age limits, side effects, interactions, pregnancy warnings. Do not use if you have liver disease. Do not mix with alcohol. You check if it's clinically tested or experimental. You check if it's approved for your condition or only off-label. That label is a compressed biography of the drug. It is not the whole truth, but it is enough to prevent disaster. Now imagine a world with no such labels. People use anything for anything. Someone gives a child an adult dose. Someone mixes two dangerous drugs. Someone uses an antibiotic for a virus. Catastrophe becomes normal. Not because people are stupid, but because the knowledge had no guardrails at the point of use. Science is exactly the same. A rule validated for one domain can become deadly when misapplied to another. A rule built for slow, large-scale trends can be abused for minute-by-minute predictions. A chemical rule tested in a clean beaker can fail inside the messy interior of a living cell. A mechanical rule tested at room temperature can fail when metal glows red hot. An aerodynamic rule for subsonic flight can kill if used for supersonic flight. In each case, The rule itself may be good inside its domain, but the misuse is catastrophic overextension. So part 52 solves a civilizational problem. How do we label rules so everyone knows exactly what they are allowed to claim? This part targets what we can call the crisis of misinterpretation. It is one of the most common ways knowledge harms the world. Not because it is false, but because it is applied beyond the evidence that supports it. The certification label is the guardrail. It is a standardized, human-readable, and machine-readable summary of a rule's license. It translates the dense verdict of the epistemic firewall into a compact set of permissions and warnings. It tells you evidence strength, scope, independence, stability, and failure modes. So you can use the rule safely without worshipping it and without abusing it. And this label is also the ultimate expression of our core axiom. Rules do not become real by elegance, consensus, or tradition. They earn a license only by surviving falsification, variation, independence, and scope discipline. The certification label is that earned license rendered into a compact form. It tells you what the rule survived and where it stops. Now we formalize what the registry requires. The registry is civilization's library of grammars, rules that have been tested and licensed. But the registry must never be a museum of slogans. It must be a living toolkit with safety labels. So the registry requires every rule to carry a certification schema, a template, a standardized truth label format that every rule must fill. Think of a certification schema like the nutrition label on food. Every product must list calories, sugar, fat, ingredients, and allergens. The point is not to shame the food. The point is to allow safe use. A diabetic needs the sugar number. A person with allergies needs the ingredient list. A person on a diet needs the calories. Without a schema, labels become marketing. In Holophase, without a schema, rules become marketing too. Deep, fundamental, universal, powerful. Words with no operational meaning. So the schema forces structure. And the core fields of this schema are the 5 pillars. Evidence strength. Scope. Independence tests passed. Stability radii. Known failure modes. Now we will walk through each one in simple, everyday language, and we will keep every symbol audio-friendly. No dense notation, just clear spoken structure. Evidence strength. How strong is the support? Evidence strength answers the simple question: how sure are we and why? Imagine you are hiring someone. One applicant says, "Trust me, I'm good." Another shows you 5 references from independent workplaces and a portfolio of work. Which one do you trust more? That's evidence strength. In the registry, evidence strength is not measured by confidence or reputation. It is measured by the depth and independence of confirmations. A rule with gold-level evidence has been tested across multiple independent experiments by different teams using different instruments, and it keeps winning. A rule with bronze-level evidence might have one strong experiment but still needs broader confirmation. A theoretical level claim might be logically consistent but still waiting for direct tests. So evidence strength is a tier system. For audio, think E1 gold, repeated, independent, high-precision confirmations. E2 silver, strong confirmations across related regimes. E3 bronze, provisional, limited, or indirect evidence. E4 theoretical, consistent but not yet directly tested. This alone prevents a common mistake, confusing a clever idea with a certified tool. Scope. Where does it work? Scope is the most important field because it prevents misuse. Scope answers: In what range of time, space, and motion is this rule allowed? Holophase makes this unavoidable, because scope must be expressed in the triunity, omega, kappa, nu. Omega scope, the time regime, how fast or slow the system evolves, what sampling and durations were tested. Kappa scope, the space regime, what length, what spatial resolutions, what geometries. Nu scope, the motion regime, what speed ranges, what coupling strength, what reference frame conditions. In ordinary terms, scope is like the limits on a ladder. A ladder label says maximum load, maximum height, safe angles, recommended surfaces. A ladder does not fail when you use it beyond its load rating. You fail to read the label. A rule is the same, so the label must say clearly, this rule is valid for omega between this slow and this fast. This rule is valid for kappa between this small and this large. This rule is valid for nu within these motion conditions. For audio listeners, we can phrase scope like omega scope, from 1 second rhythms up to billion-year rhythms, or from microsecond changes up to hours, depending on the rule. Kappa scope, from micrometer scales up to kilometers, or from meters up to planetary scales. Nu scope, slow motions compared to the speed of light, or subsonic flows, or low coupling regimes, depending on the domain. The point is not the exact numbers here. The point is the discipline. Scope must be stated. Without scope, a rule becomes a superstition. With scope, it becomes a tool. Independence. How many different ways confirm it? Independence asks, is this rule supported only by one method, one lab, one pipeline, one culture of measurement? Or does it have redundant confirmation? This matters because one pipeline can be wrong in a consistent way. One instrument can have a hidden bias. One community can share the same assumption. Independence checks include adversarial tests. Did anyone try to break it on purpose? Independent replication. Did different teams reproduce it? Multiple inference paths. Can you reach the same conclusion using different measurement routes? Think of it like verifying a rumor. If you hear a rumor from one person, you are cautious. If you hear it from 5 unrelated people who do not talk to each other, you start believing it. That is independence. So the label must show independent status. In audio, yes or no flags. Adversarial tested, yes or no. Independently replicated, yes or no. Multiple inference routes, yes or no. This helps users decide how much weight to give the rule in critical decisions. Stability radii. How sensitive is it? Stability radii. Answer. If you change measurement choices slightly, does the rule still hold? In other words, is the rule robust or fragile? This is the how much wiggle room do I have field. Imagine you are baking bread again. A good recipe is stable. If you add a little more water or a little less, it still becomes bread. A fragile recipe fails if you deviate by 1 teaspoon. Stability radii measure that fragility. In science, stability means if you change omega windowing slightly, does the result change? If you coarsen kappa resolution a bit, does the conclusion collapse? If you choose a slightly different new reference frame, does the rule still transform cleanly? So the label must include stability radii. Omega stability, plus or minus a certain percent in time window choices. Kappa stability, you can coarsen spatial resolution by a factor and it still holds. Nu stability, you can vary motion conditions within a range and it still holds. These radii tell you whether you can safely use the rule in messy real-world data or whether it requires laboratory perfect conditions. 5. Failure modes. Where is it known to break? Failure modes are not embarrassment. Failure modes are wisdom. A rule without failure modes listed is either dishonest or naive. Failure modes answer, under what conditions is the rule known to become false, irrelevant, or misleading? For example, breaks down in strong gravitational fields, fails at high velocities, assumes laminar flow, fails in turbulence, assumes weak coupling, fails in strongly interacting systems, assumes closed systems, fails when energy exchange is significant. Failure modes protect users from the most common danger, applying a rule where it has never been tested. Now we bring in the triunity certification requirement. Omega, kappa, nu, robustness must be validated together. This is crucial, because a rule can appear stable in one dimension while untested in another. You cannot give a high kappa stability rating if you only tested the rule in one frozen moment of omega. You cannot claim new robustness if you only tested one reference frame. Triunity forces integrated testing. So the certification label includes triunity robustness status. Omega robustness, tested across time regimes within scope. Kappa robustness, tested across spatial contexts within scope. New robustness, tested across motion regimes within scope. Now we connect to another deep holophase discipline, energy as tally. Certification is not only about prediction accuracy, it is also about accounting consistency. In the registry, any rule claiming robust status must have an energy tally that is consistent. Consistent across representations. Different formal descriptions must agree on the ledger. Consistent across instruments. Different measurement devices must sum to the same total within uncertainty. Stable under perturbations. Small changes in initial conditions should not create chaotic accounting errors unless there is a known failure mode. If energy accounting becomes representation dependent within the claimed scope, the rule fails certification or receives a low stability rating and a warning. Now we define the labeling process itself. There is an archive record for each rule, its full biography. In Part 51, we created those archives. Now, Part 52 extracts from that biography a compact label. We define a labeling function, call it L. For audio, call it labeling function L. L takes the archived record, call it record R, and outputs a label, call it label lambda. Say it as a sentence. Label lambda equals labeling function L applied to record R. In audio, the label is computed from the archived record. The labeling function reads evidence strength, scope, independence, stability, and failure modes from the record, then applies a standard mapping that assigns a certification tier such as foundational stable, operational caution, provisional conditional, theoretical, untested. Now let's make a certification label feel real with an everyday example. Imagine a bridge material label. It might say, certified for temperatures from -10 to 50 degrees. Certified for loads up to this weight. Tested for fatigue over this many cycles. Stable within this moisture range. Failure mode, cracks accelerate after this corrosion threshold. That label tells the engineer, safe here, dangerous there. Use correctly. Now translate to a physics rule. A label might say, this rule has gold evidence. It is valid for omega changes not too fast. It is valid for kappa scales from meters to planetary distances. It is valid for new conditions where speeds are much smaller than the speed of light. It is independently verified and adversarial tested. It is stable under moderate changes in measurement choices. Failure mode. Strong fields and high speeds. That is an audio-friendly label. Now the certification label carries a prediction. If a rule is certified as stable within its scope, then new experiments conducted inside that scope should match the rule's predictions within stated uncertainty. This is important. The label is a promise. A bounded promise, but a promise. And certification labels have a falsification condition. If the rule fails inside its own stated scope, then the certification was wrong. The label must be updated. The firewall does not protect pride. It protects truth. So when failure is reported within scope, the registry triggers automatic review. Then the label is corrected by one of four actions. Narrow the scope. Inflate the uncertainty bounds.
3. Downgrade the tier 4. Retire the rule and mark it historical and superseded.
This makes the registry a living truth-tracking system, not a museum. Now, to make this feel human, imagine a speed limit sign. If a road sign says 60 miles per hour, it is a claim that the road is safe at that speed under typical conditions. But if the road is changed, or potholes appear, or construction begins, and accidents happen even at 60, the sign must be updated. It might become 40. The sign is not sacred. Safety is sacred. Science is the same. Labels are not sacred. Truth and safety are sacred. Now let's show how this helps real-world users with a clinical example, because medicine is the clearest place people understand labels. Imagine a treatment guideline label. Evidence. Silver, based on 2 strong trials. Scope. Adults aged 20 to 65. Treatment duration 6 months, excluding patients with liver disease. Independence. Placebo-controlled and multi-center.
Stability. Dosing stable within small changes in schedule.
Failure mode. Ineffective in children, higher side effect risk in a specific subgroup. A doctor reading that knows exactly what is allowed. Without the label, the doctor might apply it off-label to a child, thinking it's probably fine, and harm could occur. Now, as a certification reader, your new skill, you learn to ask 5 questions every time you hear a scientific claim. 1. What is its evidence strength? Gold, silver, bronze, or theoretical? 2. What is its scope? In omega, kappa, and nu terms. Where does it work? 3. Is it independently supported, or is it one pipeline's artifact? 4. How stable is it? Will the prediction change if my measurement setup differs? 5. What are its failure modes? Where does it break? This transforms you from a passive consumer of authority into an active, safe user of knowledge. Now we return to the core axiom, because the label is the public embodiment of it.
Rules do not become real by elegance, consensus, or tradition.
They earn a license only by surviving falsification, variation, independence, and scope discipline. And the companion axiom: when a rule fails, we do not believe harder. We tighten, downgrade, or retire its license. Certification labels make this operational at the point of use. They prevent a common cultural disease, treating a rule as a religion. A religion demands belief, even outside evidence. A certified rule demands careful use inside evidence. Now we can summarize the essence of Part 52 in one story-like image. Imagine a powerful machine in a factory, something that can cut steel. If you leave it unmarked, anyone can walk up to it, press buttons, and lose a hand. So every machine has a safety label: voltage rating, safe operating procedures, emergency stop location, required protective gear, and warning signs. The label is not insulting to workers. It is respect for reality.
The certification label is the safety label of knowledge. It does not say, you are stupid. It says, this tool is powerful. Here is how to use it without pain. And now we look forward. With archives, We preserved the full biography of each rule. With labels, we made that biography usable in daily life. The registry has become a living, disciplined library, a civilization-scale toolkit where each rule has a clear permission structure. Now, one final question waits at the next door. Rules evolve. Newton's gravity is replaced by Einstein's, but the older rule does not become useless. It becomes a special case tool inside a broader story. A new rule explains why the old one worked where it did and why it failed where it did. So we must ask, how does the registry track that lineage? How do we preserve identity across change? How do we show that progress is not random revolution, but deepening continuity? That is the next part. Salam and peace be upon you.